It was supposed to be a regular SmackDown night, but within minutes, the energy inside the arena shifted. Cameras rolled, fireworks blazed, and the audience roared. Yet beneath all the showmanship, something strange was brewing. No one expected that a table, of all things, would become the most controversial topic in professional wrestling. But when CM Punk was smashed through a Slim Jim branded table, the gasp that echoed wasn't just for the impact, it was for what happened next. CM Punk, battered and bruised, rose slowly from the wreckage. His body told the story of pain, but his eyes screamed something more. He wasn't just hurt, he was disturbed. Backstage whispers turned into audible chatter. "It hurt 10 times more than a regular table," Punk muttered later, almost in disbelief. The words weren't part of a promo. They were real, raw, and filled with confusion. Why did that table hurt so much? To fans, it looked like another brutal spot in a match. John Cena lifting Punk for an attitude adjustment, crashing him down through a table at ringside. But Punk knew this wasn't the usual table break. Something was different. The splinters didn't fly like they used to. The sound wasn't the typical hollow crash. It was thicker, heavier, almost metallic. The aftermath left Punk not just physically shaken, but questioning everything. "There's something off about these new props," he told a backstage staffer, "and I'm going to find out what." That night, the replay aired in slow motion across social media. Fans began noticing the unnatural bend of the table legs, the stiffness of the surface, and most strangely, the absence of typical break patterns. The table didn't snap, it crushed. It wasn't a breakaway table, it was something else. Suddenly, the spotlight turned from Cena's Pipebomb callback to the sponsor slapped across the table, Slim Jim. Speculation exploded. Was this a faulty table, a new design, or was something more sinister going on behind the curtains of WWE's slick sponsorship deals? TKO Group Holdings, the newly formed mega entity behind WWE and UFC, had been pushing product placements harder than ever. Logos on ring mats, ladders, even briefcases. But a painful gimmicked table? That raised red flags. Fans were outraged, not just by what happened, but by what it suggested. Had safety been compromised for a quick check? Backstage, CM Punk wasn't done talking. At the SummerSlam kickoff event, he addressed it in public. Calm, but pointed, he looked straight at the camera and said, "I don't know why it hurts so much more, but Slim Jim is going to get a stern talking to." The crowd chuckled, but the message underneath was clear. Punk wasn't playing around. He believed the table was more than a prop gone wrong. And in the world of professional wrestling, when a veteran like Punk starts digging, you better believe there's a story worth uncovering. Meanwhile, Cena kept quiet. He didn't joke about it. He didn't post about it. In fact, he canceled a planned appearance that week. Those close to production whispered he'd been advised to stay off camera. Whether it was a PR decision or something deeper, no one could say for sure. But Punk's challenge had already been issued for the undisputed WWE Championship at Night of Champions in Riyadh. And for some reason, the stakes suddenly felt more real than ever. As Saturday approached, a strange tension grew. It wasn't just about gold anymore, it was about truth. Punk's fans rallied behind him, demanding answers. Conspiracy theories flourished. Some believed the table was deliberately reinforced to increase impact. Others claimed it was a manufacturing mistake. A few even suggested it was a setup to write Punk off TV. But none of those ideas explained what Cena knew and why he wasn't talking. By the time the big night rolled around, the atmosphere had changed. The crowd wasn't just hyped, they were on edge. They weren't just watching a wrestling match, they were watching a mystery unfold. And when Punk and Cena stood face to face in the ring, neither man looked like they were there for just another title shot. As the bell rang, one question buzzed through every fan's mind. What really happened that night with the Slim Jim table? And why does it feel like no one wants to tell the truth? The match in Riyadh didn't end the way anyone expected. CM Punk stood tall, championship gold in hand, but the victory didn't feel like a celebration. As Cena lay motionless at his feet, something was wrong. The cameras panned in on Punk's expression. It wasn't triumph, it was tension. Something had happened in that ring, something the audience didn't fully understand yet. It wasn't just about winning, it was about survival. And as the show faded to black, Fans were left with more questions than ever before. Backstage chaos erupted the moment Punk walked through the curtain. Medical staff rushed to Cena, who reportedly couldn't feel his left arm. Triple H appeared on screen briefly with a forced smile and a hurried congratulations for Punk, but his eyes darted nervously off camera. The production crew looked shaken. Something had gone off script, and it wasn't just the brutal GTS that ended the match. Word began to spread that the ring itself had given way in a strange, almost unnatural way, again linked to another new sponsor integration underneath the mat. Punk, now in the locker room, sat silently while media waited outside for a post-match statement. He wasn't in a hurry. He knew what was coming. A knock on the door broke the silence. It was a WWE official with a message. "We need you to downplay the Slim Jim comments. We've got pressure from corporate." Punk looked at him coldly. "So now we're trading wrestler safety for snacks?" he snapped. The official didn't answer. He just handed Punk a small USB drive. "You need to see this before you talk." Curious and skeptical, Punk waited until the room was clear, plugged in the USB, and played the only video file inside. What he saw made his blood run cold. It was slow motion, behind-the-scenes footage from SmackDown 2 weeks earlier, the night he went through the Slim Jim table. But this footage hadn't aired. It was surveillance style, hidden camera stuff, and in it, 2 unknown men in black hoodies were shown modifying the table hours before the show. Tools, steel reinforcements, quiet voices, then they vanished. Punk leaned back, stunned. This wasn't an accident. This was sabotage. Someone had deliberately set him up to go through that reinforced table. But who? And why? Was it a hit job from a rival? A warning from corporate? Or something darker? Perhaps a punishment for going off script too many times? Whatever it was, Punk realized he'd been made into a target, and whoever was behind it had access to production, possibly even approval from higher up. The game had changed. Determined to get answers, Punk did something few dared. He walked straight into the talent relations office and demanded a one-on-one with Nick Khan. The WWE CEO agreed, but the meeting was brief and unsettling. Khan smiled politely, denied knowledge, and ended the conversation with a veiled warning. "CM, we all play characters. Just make sure yours doesn't write himself out of the story." Punk left the room with more fear than fury. He wasn't just fighting wrestlers anymore. He was fighting a machine. The next day, #Slim Jim scandal trended worldwide. Fans dissected every frame of Punk's fall. Internet detectives zoomed in on the table legs, cross-referenced models from prior years, and even speculated about hidden weights. Wrestling journalists tried to get official statements, but doors were slammed shut. Even Cena's injury report was vague. It was clear WWE was doing damage control. But what were they hiding? And more importantly, how far were they willing to go to protect it? Punk took to social media but said very little. Instead, he posted a single quote, "Truth is like fire. Contain it too long and it burns down everything." Fans were split. Some saw Punk as a martyr for honesty. Others felt he was stirring controversy for clout. But one thing was clear, he was not backing down. He began reaching out to old allies, calling up former superstars who had left the business under suspicious circumstances. And slowly, a pattern started to emerge. This wasn't the first incident. A former tag team specialist claimed he'd suffered unexplained injuries from new ladders during Money in the Bank. A retired diva revealed she once refused to use a sponsored kendo stick after discovering it was heavier than regulation. A pattern of unsafe gimmicked props, all tied to sponsor integrations, all swept under the rug. The corporate deals weren't just branding, they were becoming part of the match, and sometimes, dangerously so. Punk's investigation was getting deeper. He began preparing a public exposé, but the closer he got, the more isolated he became. WWE's legal team sent warnings. His travel schedule was accidentally scrambled. Even fans noticed something was off. He looked tired, worn down. But in every promo, there was a quiet defiance, a fire that hadn't dimmed, because he wasn't fighting for a belt anymore. He was fighting for the soul of professional wrestling. Then came the final blow. An anonymous tip arrived in Punk's email, a short message with a chilling subject line, "You're not supposed to win." Attached was a zip file labeled Blueprints. Inside, Confidential documents showed that upcoming match outcomes, including his own, were being influenced not just by creative decisions, but by sponsor requests. Matches were being modified for product visibility, not for storytelling. And worst of all, some finishes were decided based on who could highlight the brand best. Wrestling wasn't just scripted, it was commercialized to its core. The final document was a match layout, his match against Cena. At the bottom, a red highlighted note, "Ensure CM Punk takes the bump, table reinforced for high-impact visibility." Everything was clear now. He'd been used, hurt, and almost silenced for a commercial moment. The next move was his. But what happens when a man with a microphone becomes a threat to the entire empire? The world waited. CM Punk had gone silent. No interviews, no promos, no cryptic tweets. It was unlike him. Fans speculated. Was he threatened, bought off, injured again, or was he planning something bigger than anyone could imagine? The whispers turned to worry. Punk had lit a fuse beneath the surface of the wrestling industry. Now everyone was waiting for the explosion. That explosion came at an unexpected place. WWE Raw Anniversary Special, a night meant to celebrate the company's legacy. The main event was set, Seth Rollins versus Roman Reigns in a champion versus champion face-off. Legends were lined up, tributes were ready to roll. But just as the final match was about to begin, the lights cut out. The screen turned black. Static. And then CM Punk's face. Unscheduled, unfiltered. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, eyes blazing, "I wasn't invited here tonight. I wasn't supposed to be on your screen, but if the WWE thinks they can silence the truth, they've clearly forgotten who I am." The crowd erupted, half in shock, half in awe. Security scrambled backstage, but Punk wasn't done. "You've seen the tables, you've seen the ladders, you've heard the lies, but here's the real headline. Wrestlers are being sacrificed at the altar of sponsorships. We're not storytellers anymore. We're marketing tools. Our bodies, our careers, our safety, they've all been sold." Gasps echoed through the arena. Producers begged to cut the feed, but Punk had hijacked the signal from a satellite truck outside the stadium. This wasn't a work. This was war. He began revealing slide after slide, screenshots of internal memos, footage of tampered equipment, clips of matches where impact moments were altered for brand exposure. The most haunting? A paused frame showing Cena's injury in Riyadh, caused not by Punk's move, but by a ring mat rigged with a reinforced spine plate branded by a mattress sponsor. It wasn't a bump gone wrong. It was sabotage disguised as advertising. The show was officially off the rails. Punk ended his broadcast with one final bombshell. "They wanted me to stay quiet. They wanted me to take the pain, smile for the cameras, and cash the check. But this isn't about me anymore. This is about every performer who steps into that ring believing it's about passion and purpose. We were sold out, and we didn't even get a warning." Then he dropped the mic and disappeared into the night. The backlash was immediate. Media frenzy, sponsor panic. WWE stocks dipped overnight. The hashtag #PunkExposedWWE became the #1 global trend. Fans debated, argued, took sides. Was Punk right to do what he did? Was this a betrayal or a revolution? In response, WWE released a vague, heavily edited statement. "We are committed to the safety of all performers. The incidents mentioned are under internal review." But there were no apologies, no direct denials, just silence from the top brass and growing tension among the locker room. Some stars privately supported Punk. Others, fearful of their contracts, stayed quiet. But the ripples had already reached deep. Other performers began speaking out. An anonymous NXT wrestler posted a video alleging injuries from branded ring ropes that were too stiff. A former production tech revealed that match finishes were occasionally tweaked last minute to prioritize brand visuals. These weren't isolated events. This was systemic. Then came the final twist. 2 weeks later, Punk was contacted by a former WWE board member who had resigned quietly months ago. They met in secret. The board member revealed the existence of an internal directive, Project Spotlight, a confidential initiative designed to embed sponsored props into high-profile matches with maximum visual impact. The twist? Wrestlers were never told the full extent of what was being altered. Only select agents and producers were in the loop. The goal? Monetize pain, elevate brand engagement, and make it all look organic. Punk listened, numb, angry, vindicated. So they were never going to protect us, he said bitterly, just profit from us. Now he had a decision to make: walk away forever or finish what he started. He chose the latter. At a self-funded press conference in Chicago, Punk unveiled everything: the documents, the footage, the testimonies. He called it the second pipe bomb. But this time, it wasn't aimed at Vince. It was aimed at the system, at every silent enabler, at the corporate greed that had twisted pro wrestling into a marketing puppet show. And people listened. Fans, journalists, sponsors, even rival promotions. For the first time, real conversations began about regulation in wrestling gear and safety standards in sponsored environments. AEW invited Punk for a public forum on performer rights. Several sponsors pulled out of WWE events. Change, it seemed, was not just possible, it was inevitable. But not everyone was ready for it. WWE blacklisted Punk, removed him from their archives, refused to acknowledge the storm, but his voice was louder than ever, carried by fans, echoed in interviews, and immortalized in the now iconic footage of his Raw hijack. His actions split the industry, yet exposed something that could never be unseen. And in the final shot of his documentary, Punk stares into the camera, no ring behind him, no belt in sight. Just one question: if pain can be sold, who's really in control, the storyteller or the sponsor? What do you think? Was CM Punk a reckless rebel, or the hero pro wrestling never knew it needed? Let us know in the comments, and ask yourself, how much of what we watch is really for us anymore?